Hello and good afternoon. As the war on Lebanon intensifies, US envoy Amos Hochstein, fresh from talks in Beirut, has signalled a real opportunity for a ceasefire, describing the moment as a window of hope for ending the violence. After meeting with Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri, Hochstein has entered the second day of negotiations and will head to Israel depending on the outcome of the current talks. While Lebanon has expressed a positive outlook, Israel remains firm in its demand that Hezbollah be removed from the border area before any ceasefire agreement is implemented. With thousands dead and the region on edge, the question remains, can a ceasefire be reached or will the violence continue? Welcome to In Depth.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
So, US envoy Amos Hochstein has decided to prolong his visit to Lebanon after having constructive talks with Lebanese officials, as he describes them, to secure a final ceasefire deal. According to the New York Times, Hochstein was set to meet with Lebanese officials for a second day, marking an unusually long visit and cautious optimism over a potential ceasefire agreement. At a news conference, Hochstein said that the gaps between the two sides have narrowed in discussions in recent weeks, but ultimately stated that any results from the negotiations would be the decision of the parties. The US envoy will then meet with Israeli officials, most notably Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, depending on the outcomes of today's talks in Beirut.
As tensions continue escalating along the Israeli-Lebanese border, efforts to secure a ceasefire in Lebanon are intensifying as negotiations reach a pivotal stage. U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein is set to meet with Israeli officials following his recent trip to Beirut, where he engaged with Lebanese leaders on several critical matters. Both sides expressed a desire to finalize an agreement, with the proposed ceasefire suggesting a 60-day truce. Under this plan, Israel would withdraw its troops from southern Lebanon within 7 days, aligning with the development of Lebanese forces to the border. Despite optimism regarding the resolution of most issues, the main challenge lies in clarifying how Israel and Lebanon, including Hezbollah, may respond to perceived threats in future. Hochstein highlighted a real opportunity to end hostilities after discussions with Nabih Berri, the Lebanese parliamentary speaker and a key figure in the negotiations. Analysts in Beirut suggest that talks have been constructive as Lebanon refines its position ahead to Hochstein's discussions with Israel. The implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which calls for the withdrawal of all armed forces except the Lebanese army and UN peacekeepers, remains a priority for Lebanon. Caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati has emphasized the importance of a ceasefire that preserves Lebanese sovereignty. However, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has indicated that military operations against Hezbollah will continue regardless of any ceasefire agreement.
Now, to discuss this further, we are joined from Beirut by Dr. Najat Aoun-Saliba, a member of the Lebanese parliament. And from El Khalil, we're joined by Ahmed Shadid, an Israeli affairs expert. Welcome to you both. We're going to start with you, Dr. Saliba. So Hochstein's given this press conference. He said they were able to bridge some gaps in the negotiations, but there are still some issues and some obstacles. What obstacles might remain in the way of getting to a final agreement? And how close are we to a resolution?
Good afternoon to you and to the viewers, and thank you for inviting me. Yes, Amos Hochstein has spent 2 days in Lebanon doing some negotiations with the Speaker of the House and with the Prime Minister and some leaders of parties. That's a good sign because we really believe that negotiations and diplomatic solutions should overcome and be louder than the voice of the massacres and the destructions. So any advancement or any attempt to do any negotiations, peaceful negotiation, is more than welcome, especially for the people who have left their homes and who have been bombarded and have been living under the strikes for over 40 days now. So although we understand that the negotiations are not really going to happen to resolve all the issues overnight, we welcome all possibilities and all attempts to do any peaceful agreement. We hope that the negotiations continues, and we also hope to have an international backup to these negotiations, because these are the negotiations that should be continuing rather than the strikes and the bombing and the destruction of the country and the destruction of and the death killing of a lot of people. And so yes, we understand that there might be some obstacles to overcome, especially the deal that Israel, and this was infiltrated through the media, that Israel is asking to have the freedom to strike Lebanon at any moment it feels that there is a risk to its security. This is something that will breach the sovereignty of the Lebanese country, of the Lebanese state, and we definitely stand against this, and we hope that with negotiation and with some assurance that we will imply and comply with the UN resolution of 1701, this article would be removed, so that our sovereignty and mainly the sovereignty of our country is withheld and protected.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Saliba. Well, we'll come to you, Mr. Shadid. So Hochstein stated that the Israel-Hezbollah war, an end to the Israel-Hezbollah war, is within our grasp, he says. How do you assess the chances for a ceasefire in the near future?
Greetings, everyone, and thank you for hosting me. In fact, the United States, represented by Hochstein, its mediation in this subject is, I think, not viable at all, because the United States keeps on subsidizing the Israeli occupation forces with arms and just keeps on blanketing them with a lot of coverage and support. And in fact, it has been circulated that Hochstein is coming just to express the Israeli demands and to provide the Israeli occupation forces the freedom to move freely along the Lebanese borders. And in fact, when it comes to the hostages, the Lebanese hostages subject, I believe that it is not at all possible to perceive Hochstein as a mediator, in light of him just being a conveyor of Israeli demands. Once more, the American surveillance, which actually is an Israeli demand and had been expressed by Hochstein. In fact, this specific subject had been discussed in a lot of occasions, in a lot of meetings, and so right now Hochstein needs to be more just and needs to have more integrity in these negotiation sessions. And we, a little while ago, we heard the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Mr. Naim Qassem, as he was speaking about the Lebanese agreement to for a cessation of violence is something that is on the table, but it is the Israeli occupation forces or the Israeli government that is extremely rigid.
And what do you think to that, Dr. Saliba? Mr. Shadid's point there that Hochstein is just a mouthpiece for the Israelis?
I think I reiterate that it is extremely important for us to start the negotiation and to get in touch and in communication with the international community. Amos Hochstein can push for the Israelis. He can ask for what the Israelis are saying and are doing. It's up to us as Lebanese to protect our sovereignty and to also push back and try to implement or try to ask for what is good for our country. I think negotiation in and of itself is something that is of utmost importance. We do not want the war to continue. We do not want the mass killing to continue, and definitely not the destruction. That's what I'm saying. No matter what the first draft is going to be, it's a matter of putting it on the table. It's a matter of having the two sides pushing and pulling on their demands until we reach an agreement. This is the way to do it. And that's why I said from the beginning, negotiations are not something that's going, or resolution of the negotiation is not going to happen overnight. This might take weeks and sometimes months, but it is extremely important that these negotiations are on the table and that the two parties, through a mediator, are actually talking or trying to explore the possibility of finding a ceasefire and eventually a peace agreement. So I am all for diplomatic solutions. I am all for each of the parties looking for what is good for its own country. And I am all for having mediators in order for us to really continue discussing the differences until we reach an agreement.
Okay, and Mr. Shadid, some people would say that we are seeing a real American initiative to reach a ceasefire agreement here. I know you have your misgivings and your doubts about Hochstein himself and his motives, but why do you think that the US is unwilling to do the same thing in Gaza?
In fact, this is what's happening on the ground. All the indicators attest to the fact that Israelis have received around 100,000 tons of arms coming from the United States. We have seen Blinken statements, Biden statements. In all kinds of occasions, they expressed their indefinite support to Israel. And in a lot of occasions as well, we have seen the Secretary of Defense, Austin, how he was just dedicating the American military forces to the protection of Israel. And so right now we can't expect the United States to mediate when it comes to reaching a ceasefire in Gaza, while at the same time it is just protecting Israel indefinitely. We have seen a lot of we have seen in the floating port area the American troops taking role or playing a role in murdering around 200 Palestinians in Gaza. And so all these indicators prove that the American administration is not at all interested in bringing a ceasefire in Gaza. And there's a very important point as well that I would like to refer to. When the Justice Tribunal or a court of International Court of Justice judges receive threats from the American administration that they're going to be held accountable for their sentences and their verdicts, in fact, this now proves to us that the American mediation, wherever it takes place, is some kind of a joke. And right now we can say for certain that the American administration is an integral part and parcel of these wars taking place in Lebanon and in Gaza. In fact, it is not just my viewpoint. This is what's happening on the ground, backed up by indicators.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Shadid. And to you, Dr. Saliba, coming back to Lebanon, this agreement includes the full implementation of Resolution 1701. And this requires the Lebanese army to be present along the border with UNIFIL forces, and also the disarmament of all non-state actors. How can Lebanon achieve this, and would it need to strengthen its army in order to deliver on this commitment?
The weakening of the army was a political decision in the past. And I think now the whole mind shift has changed to actually strengthening the army. The Lebanese army forces have proven time and time again that they are strong, they are capable, and they are ready to take on full charge of the sovereignty and the security of the country. So I don't have any doubt that with little support, with munitions and materials and whatever they need, they can do a great job. They have said this, and we have great confidence that the Lebanese army forces can do the job. They can go to the south, and they can really take over what Hezbollah has done to them by sidelining them. We don't want Hezbollah to stay as armed forces, because they have, by their force, sidelined the Lebanese army forces. So with this implementation of the UN Resolution 1701, we upload the giving or the role that the Lebanese army forces is going to take, and we stand behind the forces, our army, to really do a great job. And we will make sure that we give them all the political and security decisions and all the logistics that they need in order for them to take hold of the country.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Saliba. Now, I'd love both of you to stay with me. I have more questions for both of you, but we'll take a short break while we have a look at the terms of a potential ceasefire in Lebanon. And we're still joined by Dr. Najat Aoun Saliba, a member of the Lebanese Parliament, and also joined by Ahmed Shadid, who's joining us from El Khalil. Thank you for staying with us. Dr. Saliba, the Lebanese Parliament Speaker, Nabir Berri, has described the situation surrounding the ceasefire proposal as good in principle. So I'm guessing there's still work to be done. And also going back to a point that you made earlier about Israel saying that they reserve the right to strike Lebanon whenever they see fit. Could Lebanon agree to a deal with those terms?
Absolutely not, because this means that they can come and go as they please. And this is really breaching the sovereignty of the Lebanese government and the Lebanese state. And this is something that none of us as parliamentarians representing the people of Lebanon would agree to this. This is going to be a very, very important point to negotiate and also to remove from this agreement. And we hope that the negotiations continue on this point in particular in order for us as Lebanese to assure that we will implement the UN Resolution 1701 with the help of the Lebanese army forces, and there will be no need for Israel to feel that its security is going to be threatened, and that's why there will be no need for it to include this particular demand on the draft agreement. So there is a work that we as Lebanese have to do in order for us to at least assure the Lebanese people, the international community, and at the same time our opponent, that we will do our utmost importance so that the 1701 agreement or resolution will be completely implemented as it is stated.
And for you, Mr. Shadid, the same area, the same area of questioning, really. One of the terms of the agreement gives Israel the right to respond to, as they say, future violations that come from Lebanon. Do you think this is potentially a loophole that Israel might exploit in the future?
In fact, there is a multitude of loopholes in this regard, like the pending other subjects like the demarcation of borders and the Shaba farms subject and the oil and gas fields in the Red Sea. These are all pending subjects, but this specific item, I think, is quite grave, and I don't think that any of the Lebanese parties, even those who have discords with Hezbollah, including the Maroni parties or any other parties or sects in Lebanon, I think that they as well perceive all of this as a loophole. You know, when the case or the subject of Lebanese lands are mentioned, this means the adjacent borders near Palestine, and the other interpretation for the Lebanese lands is the entire Lebanese territories, including the areas that are on the borders between Lebanon and Syria. And so for this matter, I believe that this specific item is going to lead the entire negotiation carried out by Hochstein, is going to just make it a failure. In fact, speaking of the UNIFIL troops, it is very important for us to mention that Netanyahu, in 3 different occasions, in 2013, in 2017, and in 2019, he expressed his complete and utter rejection of the deployment of the UNIFIL troops or forces because he claims that they had failed in 2006 to protect the Israeli occupation forces. And so Netanyahu is clear about his intention to prolong his escalations in the region and to further breach the sovereignty of the Lebanese state.
Well, thank you very much for that answer. And thank you both for being here with me on the program. From Beirut, we were joined by Dr. Najat Aoun Saliba, a member of the Lebanese parliament, and from El Khalil, Mr. Ahmed Shadid, an Israeli affairs expert. Thank you both for an excellent discussion, and we'll wait to see what happens in the coming days. And that brings us to the end of this episode of In Depth. Thanks for watching.